can be uplifting. That human connection that we create on the broadcast every night is incredibly important.
President Biden addresses the nation on the issues facing America. Join Nora O'Donnell and the CBS News political team beginning at 5 for in-depth coverage and analysis. Complete live coverage of the State of the Union. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Democrats praised President Biden's decision to bring down the balloon, while Republicans say it came too late.
I think this entire episode telegraphed weakness to Xi and the Chinese government.
The president called for this to be dealt with in a way that balanced all of the different risks. That's exactly what happened.
President Biden is preparing to deliver his State of the Union address tomorrow night.
We're going to hear him take credit for, adding more jobs than ever before. He's going to kind of talk about, we have unemployment finally coming down and inflation coming down.
The GOP needs a bold agenda, but also new voices. Very serious about it, but no decision has been made.
Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Nicole Killian in Washington. Thank you for joining us. Now that the Chinese spy balloon has been shot down, political finger-pointing about the timing of the strike is underway. Just a day before President Biden is set to give his first State of the Union address before a divided Congress. The U.S. took down the balloon off the Carolina coast over the weekend after it flew over sensitive military sites. Multiple Republican lawmakers say the president should have shot it down sooner than he did. Beijing claims the balloon was meant for observing weather conditions. President Biden said this incident with China would not change his speech to the nation tomorrow night.
Yeah, I want to talk to the American people and let them know the state of affairs, what's going on, what I'm looking forward to working on from this point on, what we've done, and just have a conversation with the American people.
For more on this, we are joined by Scott McFarlane and Major Garrett. Scott is, of course, our CBS News congressional correspondent. Major is CBS News' chief Washington correspondent. Major, I just want to start off with you.
Sure.
I mean, big picture here, what does this mean for U.S.-China relations? We know things were already bad, but does this take things to a new low?
So unlike a lot of Republicans in Congress who are critical of President Biden, I've been to China 3 times with different American presidents. And one thing I've learned about the U.S.-China relationship is China never wants to be on its back foot. It always wants to be asserting what it believes are its interests and trying to keep America off balance. The balloon situation completely shifted that. China had to issue 3 different consecutive statements, each of them a little bit more apologetic, slightly, not deeply apologetic, but by Chinese standards, recognizing that this thing was out of their control and they were not shaping or in any way affecting the narrative. That meant the U.S. was in a position of leverage vis-a-vis China, diplomatically and otherwise. So this did not work out well for the Chinese at any level. And the United States has the balloon, and we'll find out exactly what its capabilities are and what they were trying to do with it. The United States government has asserted with complete confidence this was a surveillance balloon. We now will find the technology to prove that. And it's up to the Biden administration at this moment to be as transparent as possible to tell the American people everything it can learn about this, why it was so confident, why it waited until it was over South Carolina to shoot it down, and what's in it. And when that happens, it will have a story to tell. And if the Republicans who are criticizing the White House now can't counter that, then this will be a net plus for the United States and slightly improve U.S. relations with China in the sense that it's always about leverage. Who has it? Who's looking for it? This puts the United States in a slightly more leveraged position.
And speaking of some of that Republican reaction, we know actually there was outrage on both sides of the aisle and concern about how exactly this happened. Scott, let's take a listen to what some lawmakers said over the weekend, and we'll talk to you on the other side.
They should have been prepared. They seem not only to be unprepared, but to even be waiting. Where is the balloon going to go? What are they trying to do? That's not how you look at the actions of an adversary.
At the end of the day, I think the only reason they shot it down is because it made it into the news, and they felt forced to as a matter of politics rather than national security.
We should not have had this kind of incursion into the United States. And we have a real problem with China on a number of issues, from their human rights violations to their violations of international business law, to even the challenges we've had with them on overt spying. So I'm grateful that the military took decisive action when they did and how they did.
So, Scott, again, given some of these concerns that lawmakers have expressed, what steps, if any, may Congress take?
Well, Republicans had this whole array of choices, Nicole, from which to choose in terms of a response to this balloon incident. They could choose to draft a resolution of disapproval. They could call for hearings or briefings or for the president to mention it in a State of the Union address. Collectively, over the past 48 hours, Republicans have chosen all the options for how to respond. They have made all of those requests and more, including Senator James Lankford, who said he wants it to be part of the president's State of the Union address tomorrow. Senator Josh Hawley, the Republican from Missouri, says he would like to have a hearing in the Senate Homeland Security Committee about this. There's a possibility of a resolution on the House floor, and you just heard Michael Turner of Ohio, chair of the House Intelligence Committee, saying he wants a briefing. So they're flooding the zone with responses, Nicole and Major. It's just a matter of how impactful that's going to be 24 hours before the State of the Union.
And Major, how is the president defending his response on this? And do you expect it will be featured prominently in his address tomorrow night?
Not prominently in the sense that we're going to have 10 minutes on the balloon. We'll probably have 2 or 3 minutes. And the briefings are going to occur. The Gang of Eight, which is the sit at the top of Congress's intelligence, so all the leadership, they'll get briefed. The relevant committees will be briefed. And look, if the administration has a story to tell, trust me, it will tell it and back it up with the requisite intelligence for those committees. The president wants to say, look, and will say, there was a danger once it came over the continental U.S., the lower 48. The debris field could have been large and unpredictable. It was much better to have that debris field in the water. 47 feet of water we've now figured out, which is easy to retrieve, and that was the safest possible alternative. And the administration has said there were 3 episodes of this earlier that weren't understood because there was a awareness gap. Well, you better explain what an awareness gap is and make sure as this story develops, you don't have a credibility gap. So it's really on the administration's shoulders to explain this, and it's in a perfect position to do so if everything it's represented can be backed up. And if it can, it will have a story to tell. If it can't, the Republican critics over time will be proven more right than wrong.
And what else might we hear from the president tomorrow night?
We're going to hear about jobs. We're going to hear about the economic prosperity of the country. 517,000 new jobs in the most previous month. That's a huge number, much bigger than the consensus of the economic forecasters. That's very good news for the president. And he will also talk about things that he raised last year in the State of the Union. He wanted something on burn pits and veterans benefits. That was approved by Congress. He signed that into law. He wanted some components of what became the Inflation Reduction Act. Insulin, capped. Some prescription drug costs, capped. That's happened. Those things are specific things he can say, a year ago, I asked this Congress to do it, and I delivered. Those are going to be the kind of component parts of this. Plus, it's now a year since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. That was only less than a week old at his last State of the Union. He'll talk about what has happened in the intervening year. What is the state of the NATO alliance? What is the state of Europe? And how Russia miscalculated in Ukraine. I think that's going to be a big part of it as well.
All right, Major Garrett, Scott McFarland, thanks so much. And now a quick programming note. We will have live coverage all day on CBS Streaming tomorrow ahead of the State of the Union, including a special hour-long Red and Blue at 5 p.m. Eastern live from Capitol Hill. Also, a special edition of CBS News Primetime with John Dickerson will stream live from Washington, D.C. at 7 p.m. Eastern, followed by an hour of special coverage anchored by Norah O'Donnell at 8 p.m. Eastern. And we'll, of course, bring you live coverage of his speech and the GOP response starting at 9 p.m. Eastern. President Biden will have plenty to discuss during tomorrow night's State of the Union address, as we mentioned, particularly his negotiations of the debt ceiling with GOP House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. We'll be joined by 2 former members of Congress to preview what the president will have to say about that and more after the break. You're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today. I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
You ready?
A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming racism.
I feel like it's just a war zone between all different races.
Will this generation continue the problem?
The kids pushed them away and didn't want them to be there because of their race.
Or be the solution?
We just need to keep raising our voices. We're all human and we don't deserve that type of treatment just because of how we look.
Are the kids all right? Racism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme, CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real, you'll have time to get prepared. Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS Mornings.
An original documentary from CBS reports tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt.
Absolutely. As Taiwan faces threats and aggression,
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, there are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
The news doesn't have to always be depressing.
What do you love about running?
It can be uplifting. That human connection that we create on the broadcast every night is incredibly important.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Nicole Killian. President Biden's expected to address an array of topics tomorrow night, including the economy, the Chinese balloon controversy, and, as we mentioned, the debt ceiling. He and new GOP House Speaker Kevin McCarthy are still in a stalemate over the nation's debt limit, but on Tuesday, it'll be McCarthy sitting behind Biden as he speaks to the country. For more, we have former Illinois Congresswoman Cheri Bustos with me here in D.C. and former Michigan Congressman Fred Upton. Good to see you both, and I'll start first with you, Congresswoman Bustos. You know, Democrats appear to be mixed on whether or not President Biden should run for re-election in 2024. So first, do you think he should? And then secondly, what do you anticipate we will hear from him in the State of the Union?
Well, if President Biden makes a decision to run for re-election, I'm all in. We've got a great story to tell. He's got a great story to tell. And frankly, it is up to President Biden and his family to make that decision. And I know we'll be hearing shortly. As far as the State of the Union and the debt ceiling and what we're going to hear, look, I think that, again, President Biden has a great story to tell. We have unemployment that is as low as it's been in the last half century. We have the biggest investment in infrastructure since the Eisenhower administration. We have, I live along the Mississippi River, so we can look at things like the locks and dam system along the Mississippi River, that we have the greatest investment in that since FDR. So all kinds of stories for rural America, for urban America. And I'm very happy to hear what that story is going to be on Tuesday, tomorrow night. And I'm happy to hear what President Biden's going to share with the American public.
And Congressman Upton, this, of course, will be the first time that President Biden will be speaking in front of a Republican-controlled House as president. So what do you think the dynamic will be like in the chamber?
Well, I think it'll be a little bit rough based on what we've seen the last couple of weeks for sure. But, you know, the bottom line is this, and I worked for President Reagan a lot of years ago, and he got things done. I mean, people in 1980, Republicans maybe voted, some of them with two hands to cast that vote that was very close when he beat Jimmy Carter And but 4 years later, because of his track record, getting things done, and he had some big issues back then, whether it be the fall of the wall and inflation, all of the economy, all of that. But he won 49 states. He won all but Mondale's Minnesota. And I think as Biden looks to probably run in 2 years, he's going to want a track record of getting things done versus one of partisan gridlock where really we just pause for 2 years. We can't afford to allow that to happen, whether it be immigration, whether it be the debt ceiling, all these important Ukraine, all these very important issues. Somehow I think he's got to break the gridlock and really try to get some Republicans to make sure that things are bipartisan if he's going to get some things done.
Yeah, and to that end, especially on the debt limit, as you know, both the Speaker and the President still have some work to do when it comes to the debt ceiling. And I want to turn to some new CBS News polling that we have out, which actually reveals that a majority of those surveyed actually don't want Congress to raise the debt ceiling. But those numbers flip, with 68% saying, yes, it should be raised if it means that the U.S. could default. And so really, I want to put this question to both of you. You know, does this bolster the chances for an agreement between the Speaker and the White House, or make it more difficult? And Congresswoman Bustos, I'll start with you.
Well, there's no choice but to raise the debt ceiling. And I'm guessing in the first question that was asked in the poll, there wasn't an explanation that if the debt ceiling is not raised, we do default. I mean, that's just the reality of it. I think what President Biden is saying to Kevin McCarthy and to House Republicans is what he's not willing to negotiate is for us to cut Social Security, is for the nation to cut Medicare. What he's saying is that there are some non-negotiables as far as tying that to the debt ceiling. But the reality is we have to raise the debt ceiling in order to pay the debts that we already have. And as far as what Kevin McCarthy is saying, that we need to cut spending going forth. Well, that's in his control. He is now the Speaker of the House, and cutting future spending is in his control. So if we're going to get real about it, is we have to raise the debt ceiling to pay our debts. And going forth, if Kevin McCarthy wants to cut spending, that is in his control.
And what about you, Congressman Upton? I mean, do you think the Speaker and Republicans writ large are right to insist that spending reforms be tied to any type of increase in the debt ceiling? And do you think that could be resolved in a timely fashion?
Well, I sure hope that it can be resolved. And we're all waiting to see, in terms of the one-on-one negotiations, exactly what occurs. And I think that'll be a couple weeks, if not maybe even a month or two before we have some resolve. But, you know, going back to that poll question, I can remember when, I don't know, it was 10, 12 years ago. I think Sherry might have been there. We've always been friends. I can remember, I think it was a vote on the debt ceiling, and the vote wasn't happening. It was going to go down. And all of a sudden, we had in the cloakroom right off the House floor a TV on. It was, it had the stock market ticker on there, and it was all of a sudden the market flipped. It went from 200 points up to 200 down, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, literally that fast. That's what will occur if we don't raise this debt ceiling. I mean, it's from past spending. It's the president, whether it be Trump or now Biden, that they've signed those spending bills that have all passed with some bipartisanship in both the House and the Senate. You can't just come up with a balanced budget that starts June 1st or whatever that debt ceiling date is. Now, you've got to have a gradual approach to get to there, knowing that entitlements today make literally 2/3 of all the spending that's made, interest and entitlements. You can't turn it off just like that. But yeah, I think we'd all like to see some spending reforms that are there. But at the end of the day, we better get an agreement.
And then just very briefly, I know we're talking a lot about politics here in Washington, but I want to turn to politics in your home state of Michigan. As you well know, Senator Debbie Stabenow announced that she is not going to run for re-election next year. So are you considering running for that open seat?
No, not really. Despite my boyish look here, I'm 69 years old, which means I'd be 71, which you got to serve at least 2 terms. I'm not looking to be in the U.S. Senate in my mid-80s. They got enough older folks there that they don't need me. 36 years in the House has been a great run for me, so it's not something that I've really focused on.
Well, anyone you'd like to see on the Republican side get in?
Well, we'll see. We've got our inter-party, we got our state conventions coming up in a couple of weeks. For me, I do not want to see a rerun of what we saw this last November when the Republicans got licked fair and square. We don't need to see an encore of that. So I've got some candidates in the back of my pocket. We'll see who decides to pop up.
All right. Well, Congressman Upton and Congresswoman Bustos, a pleasure to have both of you. Thank you for joining us. And following the president's State of the Union address, newly inaugurated Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders will deliver the GOP rebuttal. We'll speak with her predecessor, Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson, next. You're streaming Red and Blue.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Yoga and wellness has become a place of anti-science.
Online clickbait.
The algorithms feed you content based upon your own fantasy.
Potentially at my peril.
There's no question about it.
Spreading digital disinformation.
Their entire yoga studio and spiritual community got so embedded in all of the QAnon stuff that it became this sick place.
Why pro-health people are fertile ground for anti-science messages.
We can just go into the whole mask thing. A lot of us just believe that's symbolism for silencing people.
People are locked in this mindset. They've been taught to accept what the medical doctors say.
No longer are you going to be willing to take any medical advice.
It's a big problem that we urgently need to address.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future?
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico
and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
After decades in the public eye and public service, this mother-daughter duo is now talking about gutsy women.
What's the gutsiest thing you've ever done?
We go person to person with Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton and Chelsea Clinton.
Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Nicole Killian. With less than 2 years until the 2024 presidential election, potential candidates are beginning to emerge. Former President Donald Trump threw his hat into the ring in November. He's expected to encounter challenges from several other potential GOP candidates, including a number of current and former governors. President Biden has signaled his intent to run for re-election next year. Sources say he is waiting until after tomorrow's State of the Union address to make a formal announcement. Former Republican Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson joins me now for more. Governor, thanks so much for being here. You know, you were recently in Iowa. You've been to New Hampshire, South Carolina. I guess reading the tea leaves, one might make some predictions here. But last year, you said pretty definitively that you expect to make a decision in the first part of next year as to whether or not you would run for president. So now that we are officially in that window, I wonder, do you have anything to announce?
Well, certainly, whenever you see Nikki Haley jumping in there, you see Donald Trump already in there, you know that we're going to have to make some decisions. And obviously, with the fact that I'm in some of the early states, but also going to Arizona to talk about ideas and solutions for our border crisis and immigration issues that we face. These are important time for me to get that consistent, conservative, common sense message out there. That's what I'm doing first and foremost. And last year, I did believe that, a candidate would need to get in and make a decision, the first part of the year, January, February. I think because of the slowness and how this has developed, we have a little bit more time to make that final decision.
What do you mean by the slowness and how this is developed?
Well, because
that no one else has gotten in?
Trump got in, but he was very quiet for a month or so. And so it's been slow in developing. And also, people know that there's going to be some options to former President Trump. The important thing for me is to be out there and talk about the border security issues, but also the support for Ukraine that I think is important and sometimes wanes across America. People need to hear that message. We need to look for solutions when it comes to the crime in the streets and to make sure that we enforce our law. And then, of course, inflation is still hurting Americans. And so we want to develop these solutions. And if that message carries out, that I can make a decision at the right time as to the role that I will play in 2024 and continue to look at potential presidential campaign.
I mean, are you trying to buy yourself some extra time here, or how close are you to actually making a decision?
Well, everything's close. I mean, you're looking at probably April. You have some of the forums there in Iowa. In July, they'll have some of the first debates.
I mean, what would convince you to get in or stay out?
Continue getting the response to the message that I bring. Right now, it's been very, very positive, and they're looking for someone that is not going to be creating chaos, but also has got the record of being a governor, of lowering taxes. We're the #1 pro-life state in Arkansas. And so a good conservative record, but problem solving and not reactionary or vengeful or angry. That's who we need to lead the party. And whenever you look at a candidate that we might present, it's got to be somebody that can attract independent voters and suburban voters. In the November election and 2022, we missed that. We didn't take advantage of that. So the answer to your question is, I want to continue to hear the response to this message, and that will help determine exactly what I do.
I know you mentioned Nikki Haley, who, as you know, is jumping into the race next week. And so if you do decide to run, of course, you would be one of at least 2 southern state governors in the race. So I just wonder, how do you see her as a potential opponent, and how do you differentiate yourself in what could be a crowded field?
Well, it probably will be a crowded field early. I don't think it'll be as crowded as it was in 2016. We'll see. And so I think there's a different dynamics. But first of all, many of those that'll get in, whether it's Nikki Haley or another governor, we're friends. We've worked together. I have great respect for her. I haven't spoken to her. I'm sure that we will as time goes on, but not recently. And so what we need are people who are out there conveying a message that we believe in for our future. And we've got to see how the Iowa voters respond to that, or New Hampshire, and then someone is going to catch on. But we don't want to diminish it early. We don't want to short circuit the opportunity to lead and to offer that leadership. And to me, whenever you look at what we need in a president of the United States, a leader of our country, we need somebody that will bring out the best in America.
And then just very briefly, yes or no answer. I mean, you've been quite critical of the former president. You have said you feel that January 6th disqualifies him from serving as president again. And so I just wonder, especially since he remains the GOP frontrunner at this time, would you support him if he ultimately becomes the party nominee? Yes or no?
Well, I'm not a fan. I do believe that he disqualified himself and should not serve our country again as a result of what happened. That's my belief and conviction. I don't think
so. Is that a no?
Well, I'm not giving you a definitive answer there because the RNC is still looking at the rules for the debates. I don't think it should be a requirement. I oppose a Democratic Party loyalty oath. As a Republican in Arkansas, I don't think those are good for our country. We don't know who's going to be the nominee. Just about everybody I can support, but I want to keep my powder dry on that for just a little bit longer because I don't think he's going to be the nominee, and I don't like a requirement for making pledges in advance. So let's just see how that develops as to what's required by the RNC to participate.
All right, Governor. Well, thanks so much. I'm sure we'll have you back and certainly keep us posted on your plans.
Thank you.
That does it for today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And this brief reminder, if you want to catch previous episodes of the program, you can see them anytime on the CBS News website.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do